Hi guys, or everyone. I shouldn't be saying guys. I keep trying to get myself out of that terrible, terrible habit. Um, after 40 odd years of it being ingrained into me by watching American TV, it absolutely is not the correct phrase to be using now. So folks, people, compadres, lots of different phrases can be used, but I got to get out of that terrible, terrible ingrained habit of saying guys, because that's not really so appropriate anymore. Hi there, it's good to see people are actually hopping on board. It is Friday and it is the live stream, and today I'm going to be focusing on procrastination. It kind of feels appropriate, what with Brexit happening, or rather not happening, or being in a whole confusing mess of its own at the moment. It really does feel kind of like the government is leaving it till the last second to do its homework and hand it in at the very last minute, which is a perfect example of procrastination in the real world. Plus, Novella also added in a question this week about the fact that she's finding it really tricky to prioritise her work, which is also another indication of procrastination. It's not necessarily something that you are doing deliberately, but it is definitely one of the symptoms of procrastination. Everything is important, therefore nothing gets done, therefore you are procrastinating, whether you mean to do it or not. You are putting things off that should really be moving you forward. So that is the topic for today, and there is a downloadable. There is a checklist for this first section, and this is the first step of my 7-step process of ways to end procrastination in your business and actually build your business. Because by stopping the delaying tactics, whether they're deliberate or unintentional, if you can put an end to those and start becoming more productive, then your business will grow. It's kind of a default option. There isn't any other way around it. So, I think that it is really, really important to maintain your focus and get past any of these possible hidden reasons that you are procrastinating. Hi there, Karen. Good to see you. And this download I have added to the files in the Facebook group, so that's freely available to anybody. Karen, is there any chance you could actually find the file link and pop it in the comments so that others will be able to follow it more easily? Not everyone can find that if they're using a mobile. Sometimes that can be hidden away somewhere. Facebook is a little tricky like that. So if you can find that link, that would be awesome, and then share it in the comments. So this is the first of 7 stages. I'm going to be running a webinar, my first official webinar. It's going to be free, so nobody has to pay for anything if you want to come along and find out what the other 6 steps are. But this is the first of those 7 stages to avoid procrastination. And if you've taken part in any of my 5-day challenges or taken part in any of my other courses, you will realise that I really believe in doing the groundwork first, and step 1 is part and parcel of that. So again, it's all about trying to understand why you're procrastinating and how, rather than just straight on into, well, if you have some productivity tools, if you have a to-do list, if you have a bit of software that's going to shut down your access to Facebook, all of those tools exist, but unless you understand why you're procrastinating, they're not really going to be very useful, because you'll just walk away from the laptop, or you'll walk away from your knitting, or you won't make the most use of the time that you have available to you. So I'm just going to run through this first section, kind of high level, but you've still got the worksheet to have a look through, and you can start to have a think in your own time around why these different areas might be impacting you, and in terms of your productivity. So hi there, Jess. Hi, Stephanie. I'm not going to stop. So I will stop saying hello to everybody as you're jumping on now. I will just focus on the actual content, because I'm trying out a slightly different way of doing these live streams, so that hopefully you'll be able to get a lot more content and learning out of them. Although it does seem rude if I don't say hello to everybody, but just know that I do see you popping in. But if I keep stopping to say hello to people, then it becomes very disjointed for anybody who's watching the replay to actually follow along. So the first step is is getting absolutely crystal clear on why you're finding it hard to move forward, why you're procrastinating, whether you realise you're doing it or not. So you need to go through and ask yourself, why am I delaying things? How am I delaying them? When am I doing this? Where am I when I'm doing it? And who is around me when I'm doing this? I mean, some of those things will be screamingly obvious to you and some of them won't be. And it could be that, you know, just by spending 5 minutes thinking about those things, you'll see that there is a common thread. So it's not necessarily that you need a particular strategy to stop you from procrastinating. You just need to understand the reason that it's happening and why you keep falling into the same pitfalls each time. So when you know the reason why, you can be far more effective in actually dealing with it. So if I walk you through the 5, if I get my little finger on the screen as well, the 5 most common reasons, and this isn't every single reason out there, but the 5 most common reasons that people put things off, especially people who are running their own business, people who have their own lives, they have kids, they have partners, they have bills, they have all sorts of other things calling on their resources and time. And again, if it's the first time that you're trying to build your own business or trying to build some income, then some of these things will probably feel quite familiar. So the first thing is that you're actually venturing out of your safe zone, your comfort zone, and you're moving into doing new things, and that is scary. It's scary for everyone. No matter how many times you've done something new, I think you are either predisposed to doing something new and you attack it with verve and vigour and you think it's wonderful, or you're just really nervous of the whole thing, and that just adds an extra layer of complexity to starting the new thing. It's quite, I say simple, it's quite a simple way to actually address that, and that's to acknowledge that you're scared, to acknowledge that it is a fear, but then to apply some rationalization to it. So how realistic is it that this is not a fight or flight situation? Doing something new, contacting people for the first time is not necessarily going to physically harm you. And so you go through that process of saying, what if I get rejected for a collaboration that I'm asking someone to do? If they ignore me, what happens? My feelings might be hurt, but nothing actual will happen. Or you can follow up. It could be that your email got lost. It could be that they're incredibly busy, but it doesn't actually physically impact you, which means you can then move on to asking somebody else if they would be interested in a collaboration. And there are many, many, many people out there who do want to work with you and do want to work on collaborations, whether that is as a designer, as a dyer, as a magazine that's looking for content. So the fears that we have around our business and doing things for the first time are not generally realistic fears. They are just ego-driven fears. And that moves on to the second thing, which is fear that you're not good enough. And this can be absolutely soul-destroying. There's the imposter syndrome, which is, why am I doing it? I haven't got the experience to do it. I haven't practiced enough. There's the horrible, horrible habit of comparing yourself to other people. Oh, but I've been doing this for 5 minutes. She's been doing this for 3 years, and look where she is. She's got a huge audience. They've got a massive Instagram account. He's got this huge following on YouTube. You need to stop comparing yourself to other people. Everybody started from the same point, which is, as a new designer, they had nobody following them on Instagram. They had nobody following them on YouTube. They didn't have a blog. They hadn't written their first pattern yet. Everybody starts from the same point, and comparing yourself to other people, as I've said many times before, is not a good practice for your mental health. You can look to other people for inspiration, you can look to other people for support, but do not actively compare yourself to others, because that is just going to be quite crippling mentally. If you do suffer from the fear that you're good enough, then you can look at actually creating a targeted plan to deal with that. So in the same way as when you move out of your comfort zone, you can look at the the fear and repaint it so that it seems less real. The fear that you're not good enough will only be overcome when somebody tells you that your pattern is good. Someone can only tell you your pattern is good if you put it out into the world. And if you send it to a tech editor or if you send it to a tester, you have to be bold enough, brave enough to take that step to send your pattern out, to send your work out, to share a photograph of yarn that you've dyed for the first time or a new colourway. The first time you do it, it is going to be really scary. But after you get that feedback, after you get people telling you how gorgeous that looks and they can't wait to use it, or somebody has worked on a pattern and they really enjoyed it, or they worked on it, but this might make it a bit easier for the next person. If you're working with a tech editor or tester, then that process is actually quite reaffirming and that you are good enough. And having somebody give you some feedback to tweak something here, there, or elsewhere does not mean that you're rubbish and you should stop. Every successful author has had a team of editors behind them who have gone through and corrected their work. So even the author of Harry Potter, Ms. Rowling has had a team of editors correcting her novels. She's had writers who've then retweaked them and made them suitable for theatre, and then retweaked them to make them suitable for movies. And that whole process, we think that she's this amazing success because she's a millionaire and she can do whatever she wants, and she writes a book and she's instantly got an audience for it, but she still goes through the same processes that any other author would go through. And that is no different whether you are a writer of a novel or if you are a writer of a pattern. You still have editors there to support you, and you have to go through that process. So imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I think most of us have succumbed to it at one time or another, but you just have to be bold and push past it. The next thing that quite a lot of people will suffer from is perfectionism. And this is really, really tricky to get past as well. But perfect is the best that it can be now, the best that it can be today, the best that it can be right this minute. It doesn't mean the best it can be in the history of eternity. So what you need to do is create your work to the best of your ability today, and then share that with somebody. As you grow, as you learn, whether that is recording how-to videos, whether that's writing blog posts, whether that's writing and presenting patterns, you will learn more, and you will learn what your audience wants, and you will learn what is useful over time. And so when you go back to look at some of your earlier work, you might think, oh, what was I thinking? But the point is, you got that work out. You can't get to the point where you've learned what your audience wants until you've started publishing stuff. So if you give in to perfectionism and spend 6 months tweaking a pattern so that it is, to your mind, perfect, you're not getting any payment for that. You're not moving on to the next design. You're not building an audience. You're not growing with your audience, with your knitters or your crocheters or your end users. You're not developing that relationship because you're just sitting in a holding pattern. You're going nowhere. You're just burning up fuel. If we use an airplane analogy, you're just sitting in a holding pattern, going round and round and round in circles, and you're not actually earning anything. You're not earning knowledge. You're not learning what your customers want. You're just sitting there and waiting. And so that is just another form of procrastination. So if you do suffer from this, if you suffer from OCD, if you're struggling with perfectionism and you think that this font isn't right and I need to tweak that, and you're moving things around by millimeters, then you are definitely struggling with perfectionism. So at that point, you need to just drive a stake into the ground and send out the first version. One of the joys of working with Ravelry, or indeed any digital download, any digital pattern, is that you can update it, you can edit it, you can tweak it, you can make changes, you can fix any errors, and then get it sent out to anybody that's bought it. So the fear of a incorrect version of your pattern going out shouldn't stop you from getting a pattern out there. Even if there is some horrendous typo that you've just not been able to see because you've been looking at it too much, which again is a real thing, then you can correct that and just get an update sent out to everybody who's bought a copy, and then everything is good and you can move on to the next thing. But moving forward is massively important, and if all you're doing is stopping yourself or sitting in a holding pattern because it's not perfect, that's absolutely procrastination. That is stage one. Just holding pattern is not a good place to be. The fourth thing is, and this is one that I suffer from a lot, is that you absolutely hate the thing that you're hiding from. Now, for me, getting stuff into testing is a nightmare for me. I like doing the testing process. I like to support people as they are testing my patterns. I love working with people. I love talking to people one-on-one, and I like learning what things need to be changed so that I can improve the pattern and get a better pattern out to people, so that even beginners and experienced people can read a pattern and all create happily from it. I don't want to be hand-holding to such a degree that it frustrates experienced knitters or crocheters, but equally I don't want a pattern that is so confusing that a beginner can't follow it. So I really do value the testing process, and I just really struggle with starting the tests. So I delegate that task. I have Karen set up my tests for me because she is brilliant at doing that, and she enjoys testing, and that is fabulous. So I also use a tool to make it simpler. So I use Yarn Pond, which is also excellent for testing, and that way I can just look at the comments, I can look at the questions, I can see if there's anything that needs to be changed or edited, updated. If videos need to be recorded to support beginners through the process, then I can create all of that, but I just really struggle to get it started. And the same thing goes with physically sending stuff out, putting something in the post. Physically putting something in the post, I have no idea why, but that is an absolute nightmare to me. And unless I'm incredibly strict with myself, I can't get stuff out, physical things out the door. I can upload courses, I can record videos, I can write patterns, I can knit for hours on end, but putting something in a package and taking the package to the post office seems to defeat me every time. So that is something else that I end up getting somebody else to do for me, because it's not going to happen for me. I've realised that is one of the downfalls for me. So yes, outsourcing, putting it on autopilot, delegating it to somebody else, or if you can actually get away with not doing it at all, then don't do it. I wouldn't say don't test at all, because testing is absolutely critical and crucial. But if you don't need to be posting things out, don't make things that you have to post out. Which is one of the reasons I don't create physical products, because I know that I would have a real problem posting out those physical products. So just have a think about why you're not doing something. And the fifth thing is, and this kind of relates back to a post I put up a while ago about your chimp brain, your chimp self, which is that you're addicted to pleasure, which might sound a bit odd, but it's not really. The endorphins that you get because you're playing a silly game on your phone are real things, and they release real chemicals into your brain, and they actually do make you feel good. And sometimes, because we're stressed, we just need that little kick of, wow, I've cleared the level, I've matched those shapes, whatever it is that I've done, I've unlocked the next level. And those endorphins really hit those pleasure centers of the brain. And so the same thing happens when you're binge watching Netflix. That's why you binge watch. You watch episode after episode after episode, because it makes you feel good. Now, unless you are sitting there and actively working on knitting or typing or editing whilst the TV is on, then it's dead time. But the danger is that you're creating habits that you don't even realise that you're creating. So it's nice and safe, it's an easy thing to do, you know that it will relax you, but rather than just doing that game for 5 minutes, you actually spend half an hour on it, or you're watching a programme and then you've suddenly realised that you've binged on 3 episodes of something. Game of Thrones in my case, but I was knitting a shawl at the same time, so I hold my hands up to that, but try and pretend that knitting the pie shawl, the midnight mass shawl, was actually work while I was binging on every episode of Game of Thrones. It took me a while to knit. So this then becomes a habit, and that then becomes a whole other thing that you've got to deal with, and you need to break the habit of sitting there and playing your games for half an hour. And it's really, really, really tough to do that, but it can be done. And so there are 3 things that you need to do to break one of these habits, these endorphin releasing habits. So 1, you need to create a new habit. And then you need to stick to it every day for at least 60 days, 2 months, absolutely, no exceptions, because this makes the habit hardwired in your brain. You actually physically create new neural pathways in your brain that will override the old pathways that you've built up. And then find hacks, find ways and shortcuts to help you change the habit, the old habit, into a better one, or change the new habit into an even more productive one. Now, one of the best ways to do that is to absolutely get clear on your ultimate goal. For me, my ultimate goal is to enable as many new designers to get their work out into the world as possible. To such an extent that I ended up creating Yarn People, because I realised that there was a whole section of the yarn community that was not being represented, and encouraging some of the mainstream media wasn't working, waiting for mainstream media to come to their senses wasn't working. And so Katie and I discussed this at length and decided to launch Yarn People, which then gives people that are underrepresented somewhere that their work can be seen. They can get paid for their work, they can get a new audience for their work, and they can actually bring eyes to a different set or a different subset of designers. And it's not just grannies knitting in their back gardens or crocheting halfway up the countryside, all looking the same. So for me, that was part of my goal. It was still part of the overarching goal of enabling as many new people to publish their work, to have their work seen, to earn a living from their work as possible. And by having that as my goal, that means everything else that I do is easier for me to complete because I know why I'm doing it. So this one, you need to think really deeply about your why. Why is it that you want to do what you're doing? Why do you want to design? Why do you want to dye yarn? Because you might find, and some people do, that really you just don't have enough of a reason to do the tasks, and that's why you're not doing them, because you haven't identified your real driving why. I fancy getting my face in a magazine because I want to show it to my nan. That's not necessarily the reason that won't give you enough impetus to actually design and get your work out, whether you're designing colorways or whether you're designing patterns. That is not enough of a reason for you to get your work out into the world. And so that can't be your ultimate goal. There needs to be a really solid driving reason that is going to keep you going no matter what. So even if you are working for 10 or 15 minutes a day in between the naps that your children are taking, you won't make the most of that time unless you know that you have a driving reason that is pushing you to do what needs to be done. So that is a really serious one for you to think around. What is your why? Why do you want to do what you're doing? Why are you designing? Why are you dyeing? Dyeing yarn. I don't mean anything more serious than that. And so those are some of the things that you really, really need to think through. And the workbook, if I can find it, the worksheet, the checklist rather, goes through everything that I've just talked about. So you've identified any source of fear that's leading me to procrastinate. I've identified the why behind my habit of procrastinating. My reason is usually that I'm venturing out of my comfort zone. I'm fearing for some form or other, perfectionism. I genuinely hate the task I'm about to tackle. I'm addicted to doing a game or some other form of pleasure. I'd rather sit down and eat snacks than work or something else that you've come to realise. I understand that procrastination is a habit that I've created. As I said, that I'm going to go do something else. My monkey brain, my hind monkey brain is actually running away from me and taking control. So I'm aware that these other things are going on. It takes 60 days to break a habit and create a healthier new neural pathway. And I need to find the right hacks to reinforce the new habit and banish the old procrastinating behaviour. And I've gotten clear on my ultimate goal. I want to grow my business because, and there's space in there for you to fill that in. So for whatever the reason is that you want to grow your business, the reason you want to develop your business and your skills, get that down on the piece of paper. And that will help you massively in terms of tackling procrastination. Now, if this was a lot to take on board, I do appreciate that. And I am going to be putting together a series of blog posts. Again, they'll be coming out hopefully over the weekend and through next week around procrastination. And I will be sharing a link soon for a webinar where I'm going to go through everything in a lot more detail. There will be slides, there'll be downloads, and there'll be actions for people to take as a result of going through this to actually think about procrastination. And there's also going to be a list of tools that you can use, whether that's software apps that can actually limit the time that you access things on your phone or iPad or your laptop, or whether it's just simple task lists and organisation strategies. So there's going to be a whole host of supporting information for folk out there. And that will be in a webinar that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I'll be rerunning it. So if you can't be there on the first live one, then I'll be rerunning others at different times so that hopefully you'll be able to hop on one at a time that suits. But that is it for now. That's a good half hour of me talking to you. So hopefully that has made some sense to you. And I will see you all next week. If you have more questions, then pop them down as always with the hashtag Q4Babs, the letter Q, number 4, and then BABS, and I will answer those questions. And again, if you actually post up anything that you're having difficulties with, then I can look at preparing something like this for future Friday calls, where you get some downloads and something very specific to work through, as against just a general Q&A session, which I don't mind doing every now and again, but I'd rather you actually had something specific that you could be working on to resolve a problem. So until next time, I will say bye-bye for now and see you all soon. Bye.